This is something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm just starting to realign and really chat to authors who are wanting to go full-time. And a lot of the people that I'm chatting to are telling me some interesting things. So I wanted to talk to you about the 5 myths that I've come across in the time that I've been a full-time author that definitely stop people from making that leap. Like, you can be an author, but you might not necessarily be full-time. And making that leap is, it's quite a big leap to go from, writing in your spare time to writing full-time. So one of the biggest things that I've found is this up here. Whilst it's amazing and allows me to do a lot of things, there is this little voice that tends to have some really annoying things to say. Now, I found quite early on that naming this just made it a lot easier to deal with. So you may have read on the blog, if you're familiar with my blog, I talk about Neville a lot. Now, Neville is not my partner. He's not my husband. He's not even really a friend. He is that negative inner voice that just tends to pop up whenever I'm doing something different, or whenever I'm doing something that he thinks I shouldn't be doing, or whenever I'm doing something that's just slightly outside my comfort zone. Neville is the first one to chime in and be like, Elise, I don't think ... or I think we better do this, or don't do that. So Neville and I have this ongoing conversation, let's say, where we are basically disagreeing on how we are going to run our lives. So that's the biggest thing to understand, is that we are fabulous at self-sabotaging, and it's all thanks to our inner voice. Once you understand that, and certainly for me, once I named Neville, it takes the power away. Like, it just removes that. So Neville is a part of these 5 myths because he's basically behind everything that is stopping you from becoming a full-time author, or, making that big leap. So if you're sitting there thinking Elise is crazy, I'm definitely that. I'm definitely not going to lie there. But a lot of it has to do with Neville, and he comes from a different space and from a different time where, we are cavemen, and we've come from that era. So he was there, or is there, to keep us safe and to stop us from danger. But you know what, Neville? There are no tigers in the bushes, at least not here in New Zealand. Definitely no tigers hanging out there. So what I want to chat to you guys about now, I'm looking down at my phone just to make sure, because I've got a couple of cameras going on here, just to make sure I'm not missing comments or anything like that. So if you are joining live, please don't leave me hanging. Let me know that you're here, because there is nothing worse than talking to a camera and just seeing my face. Like, I'd rather be talking to you guys face to face. So you can see my face, but I can't see yours. I don't think technology is quite there yet where we can kind of do that. So let's just get stuck in, so we're not wasting too much time. I don't want to spend loads of time here. So the first myth I want to talk to you about is the one that Neville is definitely great at hitting home when you're just starting out as an author, is that you can't sell more books. He is just hammering that one home all the time. And the reason why he's saying that is generally because when we start out writing as authors, we're not really thinking about it like a business. We're not really thinking about how we're going to market the book, or who's going to read the book, or how this is going to happen. We are focused on the writing, which is quite normal. Like, that's what we should be doing. But I'd really encourage you, if this is something that you're struggling with, like if this is something that goes through your mind where you just think, I can't sell more books. Like, if you've published your book, it's done, you've gone through the launch phase, and you're sitting there and you're going, that's it. I can't sell more books. I'm done. Like, that's it. And Neville's having a great old time, and you're here going, yep, you can't sell any more books. So if you want to stop that happening, then you need to take a step back and put your business hat on, because if you want to be profitable as an author, You've got to look at this like it's a business. Now, I know that that sucks, and I am not a business-minded person at all either. My husband quite often says I am very airy-fairy and that I'm a dreamer, and I would much rather have that label than anything else. So business stuff for me is super, super tricky. But I'm not talking about, you know, all the accounting side of things and all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about being very strategic and making sure that you have some idea of how you're going to continue to market your book. Because the reality is that once you've launched your book and you've gone through that process, if you don't continue to talk about your book, if you don't continue to share it, then you're not going to sell any more books. It's just like, if I tend to treat my books like websites. You know, if I think about it like that, if I think about, you know, if you look at it from that perspective, so the only way someone is going to find your website is if you're sharing your URL. So if you've written a blog post, what's the first thing that you do is that you share it, but you don't just share it once, you continue to share it. So if you look at your book in the same way and continue to share it, then it's actually a lot easier to sell more books. So I would encourage you, if you're sitting there thinking that you can't sell more books or you're not selling more books at the moment, sit down and just map out a marketing strategy for the next 90 days. Sit down and just go, okay, what am I going to do today? What's one thing that I'm going to do today to market my book? That's it. And it's super simple. You could write a blog post about it where you link to it. You could, you know, share a tweetable quote or something like that. You know, Pinterest is amazing. You could create a whole bunch of images with extracts from your book, pin them on Pinterest. There are lots of things that you can do. So it's just stepping back, putting your marketing hat on, let's say that rather than the business hat, marketing hat on, going, okay, well, how am I going to share my book? How am I going to get people noticing it? So that is how you deal with myth number one. So myth number two, I'm just sorry, guys. I have to just check my phone. Myth number two is all about the tech stuff. Now, I know this is super hard for a lot of people. So if Neville is having a good old field day with you on this one, which is, I have no tech skills, so I can't be a profitable full-time author because I don't know how to set this up, you know, insert whatever that might be, whether it's a website, whether it's your email marketing platform, whether it's setting up your social media accounts, all of that stuff. Neville is great at just coming in and going, you can't do that, or you don't have the skills to do that. Now, I am definitely no massive tech person either, but what I do know how to do is Google, and it is the answer for anything tech related. So when I first started my website, I didn't have any funds to pay someone to set it up. So I just Googled how to set up a website. And you'll find there are tons and tons of videos on YouTube that will show you step by step and walk you through how to set that up. So the tech side of things doesn't have to be super difficult. You just have to, again, it's really about taking a step back and just going, what do I have to do? And not trying to attempt everything at once, because again, it's too much overwhelm. Just do one thing at a time. It'll make your life a lot easier. So when it comes to the tech stuff, I kind of call BS on anyone that says I don't have the tech skills, because anyone can learn it. My mum and dad know how to operate a computer and know how to Google. If they can do it, you can do it. So it's really more about whether you want to do it. So you just have to take a step back, ask the question, is this something that I actually want to do? Like, do I want to have a profitable author business? Then you're going to need to learn some tech stuff, and then you can outsource it at a later date. But right now, sometimes you just have to do it. It's really that simple. I'm definitely not sugarcoating that. It is, and it's not hard once you sit down and just take the time to watch the videos. So sorry if this is something that you are struggling with right now, and it's definitely something I, you know, when I'm working with coaching clients, the tech stuff is definitely one of the biggest hurdles. But once they watch a walkthrough video, it's a lot easier to understand, and it's just taking the time to do it. So that is myth number 2. So myth number 3 is, this is probably the one that Neville really hammered home with me when I was kind of starting, is that I'm going to have to work longer hours if I go full time. Like that's just going to be, I'm just going to be this person that is sitting behind my laptop typing away 12 plus hours a day. If I want to be a profitable full-time author, I'm going to have to work longer hours. No. I would say that on average, I would work 5 to 6 hours a day, and sometimes only 4. Like it really does depend on sort of where I'm at in a book project, what I'm doing. And it really just comes down to managing your time. Like you could definitely work 12 hours a day if you want to. Like if that was something that you wanted to do, you could totally go ahead and do that. But I definitely like to work smarter. So I'm very systems and strategy orientated. So I have systems in place to kind of streamline. I have to try and pronounce my M's and my N's. Streamline all of that sort of stuff so that I'm not having to work that sort of time. So definitely don't think, and if Neville is, saying any of this, you have to show him that it actually doesn't take that amount of time, and it is all about scheduling. Now, I know if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't like to schedule my life. You totally don't have to schedule your life at all. It's just about figuring out where you've got time, how you're going to make the best use of your time so that you're not sitting down at your computer going, what am I going to do right now? And that's how you waste an hour on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or Pinterest or Snapchat, whatever, Netflix, whatever it is. So if you think that you're going to have to work 12-hour plus days as a full-time author, that's definitely not the case. So that is myth number 3. Myth number 4, this is probably one of the ones that I hear that's super common from my coaching clients, and that is, if I'm going to be a full-time author, that means I have to be a starving writer. Like that is just the myth that comes with being, people say that, oh yeah, I'm a writer, I'm a full-time author, and you can automatically see them go, okay, well that must mean that you're not making any money. I find that when you tell people that you're doing something creative, that they feel like you shouldn't be making money from it, which I find very interesting. Anyway, that is a subject for another Facebook Live. But this one, I'll be a starving writer, is so not true. And there are so many people who are successful. So I'm just going to rattle off a few names. You may have heard of them. Let's start with Steve Scott. I'm pretty sure he's not a starving writer. Joanna Pearson, she's definitely not a starving writer. Chandler Bolt, definitely not a starving writer. Me, I definitely don't look like I'm starving. So I think when you have that conversation with Neville or whoever your inner negative Nelly is, you can show them that this is definitely not the case, that being a full-time author does not equal starving writer at all. Oh, Neville, honestly. Okay, so we are just about to wrap up. So I just want to go over the very last one, which is self-published authors aren't taken seriously. So this is one that I have had people say to me actually very, very recently down here in Australia and New Zealand. Self-published authors aren't taken seriously. So if you're looking at becoming a profitable full-time author, you're probably going the self-publishing route because it is the fastest way to go. Now, I've had several conversations here, and when I say here, I mean Australia and New Zealand, where it's actually not that common to self-publish. They are more likely to opt to go the traditional route versus the self-publishing route because they feel like they have to go the traditional route because they feel like they won't be taken seriously. Now, that is actually not something that I ever thought about when I self-publish a book, but maybe that is something that I probably maybe should have considered, but it's just not something that I was worried about. And I think that when you take a step back and you look at the pros and cons of going traditional versus self-publishing, I would rather go self-publishing. And I know Joanna Penn has done both. She predominantly self-publishes, but she has traditionally published as well, and she has no control over the traditional published book, and she gets far less commissions. So typically, as an example, if you're going the traditional route, you might get 5% royalties, like, up to 5%. You may get up to 15%, but you would have to be someone quite big, like you'd have to be a big name. Conversely, with self-publishing, you get between 35 to 70%, depending on how your book is priced. So I would much rather get like 70% royalties and have full control over what my book looks like, what is going inside my book. Because the other thing is that if you're going traditionally published, you can't insert things like a landing page, a link to point to a landing page and stuff like that. Like, it all has to be approved, and they quite often change your book. Like, you hand them your manuscript, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to be published. They're going to go through a very rigorous editing process. Now, you definitely need to go through an editing process, but that doesn't mean that someone can come along and change the tone of the book and all that sort of stuff, which can happen when you go through the traditionally published route. So that myth that self-published authors aren't taken seriously, complete and utter BS. I've never once had someone not take me seriously because I'm self-published. So I feel like I'm getting a little bit serious here, but I'm really just want to hit home that I think that that is complete and utter BS. That self-published authors aren't taken seriously, because in the online world, which is really where we are kind of hanging out, and there are self-published authors that make the New York Times bestsellers list. So there's plenty of evidence that self-published authors are definitely taken seriously. Anyway, if you want to learn more about these 5 myths in a bit more detail and with a bit more action steps on how you can figure these out, you can head on over to the blog, and I'm going to include a link because I've written a full blog post about it. Potentially stopping you from making that big leap, and that really, to make that leap, you just need to put some systems and strategies in place so that you can go ahead and do that. If I can help in any way, let me know, or you can head on over to hustleandgroove.com. You'll see that the 5 myths blog post is like at the top. I literally just published it a couple of days ago. But thanks so much for hanging out, and take care, and I'll talk to you soon.